Welcome to the Leo Zagami Show in a new 2026 Illuminati Confessions and Illuminati News edition, celebrating 20 years of Illuminati Confessions online. Wow. Yes. Pope Leo, yes. Pope Leo picks a former Rothschild executive linked to Epstein to run the Vatican Bank. I mean, guys, I don't know what to say. It's rather a surprise, even for me. I didn't think that these elites were so shameless to now show themselves with the Vatican in this way, and to have somebody like Pope Leo XIV, who, with no sense of shame, gets this guy to direct the Vatican Bank, the YOR. This is the YOR. The YOR is an important and prestigious institution, guys, that it's like holding the keys to every single piece of finance of this millenary, we can say it, institution called the Vatican. So, guys, in the meantime, let's thank our sponsors for today who have made this show possible, thanking them also for the extra show that we brought you on Wednesday. For those who are actually watching today's show, and maybe they have missed Wednesday's show, I highly recommend it, because the dark enlightenment was rather visible this week in the White House when a humanoid robot arrived like this. The incredible thing about this humanoid robot is that it's called Plato. And it talks with the voice of a human that is female. So I went on and asked the AI to clarify this point, because I was a little bit confused. So this is the answer I got from the AI regarding this humanoid robot that was presented by Melania, who is promoting the use of AI for children. Cyber Satan is basically really becoming so important and relevant these days. So I urge you to read volume 6.66, which is the Age of Cyber Satan, Artificial Intelligence and Robotics, but it's also a book that includes a lot about the holy rite of exorcism and how Vatican II sabotaged this rite. Is also an important part of this book of mine. In any case, I went and asked the AI about these inconsistencies on the sexual nature of this robot. So the answer was, actually, the situation is a bit more complex than just a female robot. The robot Melania Trump appeared with and the Plato she described are technically two different things. So the actual machine that worked with her is a third generation humanoid developed by Figure AI. It's a slick, gender neutral. So it's important to say that it's a gender neutral black and white metallic design without a face. However, it spoke with a female voice during the summit. So now you have these gender neutral robots. Then, of course, Plato is the name Melania used for her vision of a future AI teacher named after the famous ancient Greek philosopher. And here we could, of course, bring in also the concept of philosopher kings, connected to Plato, which is very dear to the Illuminati, which I've exposed in volume 9 of my Confessions. Volume 9 is becoming also extremely relevant. All the books of the Cyber Satan trilogy, which starts with volume 6.66, expands with volume 7 and ends up with volume 9, are becoming increasingly relevant. Okay, so at this point, I want to also thank, though, the sponsors of today's show, Larry Frascella and Daniel Estes, with are applause, because that is a tradition here that we have and we will always maintain. An applause for our sponsors. Thank you for believing in us, and thanks to our sponsors. This week we were able also to bring you an extra show on Wednesday, and we will probably bring you an extra show also next week, because when we make promises, we actually keep them. On the contrary of those people who say promises made, promises kept during their presidential campaign, and now have made basically a mess of their promises. Now, let's go back to the title of this show, Pope Leo. Pope Leo picks up a controversial figure, because at the end of the day, we will not expect somebody who was working with Ariane de Rothschild and with Jeffrey Epstein to suddenly become in charge of the Vatican Bank. But this is what is happening these days. The world is in shock. Now, some people say, you shouldn't be in shock. Everything is possible with the Vatican these days. Anyway, the Pope has picked a top Rothschild executive from the Edmond de Rothschild branch of the Rothschild, which is the Swiss French branch, rather than the Rothschild & Co., which is the French and English branch. These two branches, a little over 10 years ago, had problems for the use of the Rothschild name. We have talked about it in past episodes of the Leo Zagami show. Now, in my most recent book, The Rise and Fall of a Frankist Monster, I explained the connection of the Rothschilds to the Sabbatean Frankist heresy and to the Vatican, and of course also to Jeffrey Epstein. I've also discussed this topic in several articles I published lately, articles that have been based on the alleged fact that Epstein lived in the Vatican, the fact that Jeffrey Epstein had a role, a very important role in getting these two factions at war of the Rothschild Bank to come back together and be able to both use the name Rothschild, because that was the matter in this contentious war between Rothschilds, the exclusivity of the name Rothschild. And then, we have now suddenly Pope Leo, who yesterday appointed a key professional associate of Ariane de Rothschild, called François Pauli, who is the former CEO of the bank Edmond de Rothschild, which is a private bank, is a financial group, but is also a private bank. And he will become the next president of what we commonly refer to as the Vatican Bank. It's actually called the IOR, Istituto per le Opere di Religione. That's the name in Italian. It has also a Latin name. In any case, the news quickly surfaced all over the internet, and people started to talk about this in various posts made on X, first of all, claiming that they were rather shocked by this choice. This is the smiley face of the guy, François Pauli, former Rothschild director, who has been appointed as head of the Vatican Bank. Now, today, there was a lot of talk, I noticed, in various newspapers, including the Daily Mail, about the Illuminati, the Rothschild, and the nomination of this gentleman. But nobody really focused on the connection of the Edmond de Rothschild Bank, which has been now fully confirmed, and Jeffrey Epstein. It's almost like they like to compartmentalize certain information which might be deemed a little bit too dangerous if put all together. So if you want to find my latest article, you can go on leozagami.com and you can study the subject over there. In any case, this is what the Daily Mail has said today, actually yesterday. New Vatican Bank chief sparks Illuminati takeover claims, deep state taking over the Catholic Church. Now, the Catholic Church worked for over 2 centuries with the Rothschild, so it's not a novelty. They have always been Jesuits, Sabbatean Frankists, they have been together in bed for a very long time. And then there is the connection also with the JP Morgan. That's also another interesting connection, which I've also discussed in relation to the Zodiac Club. So here we are today in a situation in which François Pauli is discussed in this article. François Pauli has been elected to serve as the president of the supervisory board for the Institute for the Works of Religion. And of course, the ties to the Rothschild Group bring us to talk about the Illuminati. Now, the situation is much more complex. The Illuminati, in reality, prohibited the Jews to join the lodges, but then the Jews, the Sabbatean Frankist Jews, and Moses Dobrusca, the son of the cousin of Jacob Frank, managed to work with this new Illuminati group called Asiatic Brethren to regularize their position in the lodges of Prussian Freemasonry. So it's very important that you read this book to understand all these links that eventually will establish today's banking cartel, which includes the Rothschilds, the Warburgs, the Schiff, and of course JP Morgan, Rockefeller, and all the others who are all linked all the way to Peter Thiel, which we have discussed on Wednesday in relation to dark enlightenment. And the dark enlightenment, like I stated, arrived in the White House this week with this humanoid robot, which became like the focus of all attention. Now, this week we also saw that humanoid robots are also starting to take the jobs of people like the ones who work at McDonald's. You used to say, well, maybe if you don't know how to do a job, you can still work at McDonald's because it's an easy way out. If you are simply in need of a job, go and work at a McDonald's. Nowadays, things are different because in China, they're already experimenting the McDonald's of the future with these humanoid robots. The experiment is being conducted in China because out of all places, McDonald's thought China would be the ideal place where to conduct this first experiment. But remember, this is the future of fast foods. The future of fast foods is basically humanoid robots. Pretty scary, huh? But let's go back to the subject of today. Pope Leo has always said he is opposed to Donald J. Trump, is opposed to what is happening here in America because Trump this, Trump that. But then he goes and picks a former Rothschild executive linked to Ariane de Rothschild and Jeffrey Epstein, who of course are also linked with Donald J. Trump. So one says, what is this? What kind of show is this? I mean, what kind of shit show is this? That's why in the month of February, after this email surfaced amongst the latest batch of the Epstein files, or one of the latest batches, there was an email in particular, an email that mentioned the god Baal. Baal is a demon. Baal is god, a Canaanite, Phoenician god of fertility, who people sacrifice their children to. Basically, Moloch. Baal is an epithet of Moloch. They are this kind of the same thing. Plus, in Greco-Roman terms, we would say Saturn Kronos. Now, when the Iranians had to attack the Western system during their anniversary of the Islamic Revolution in Iran, they attacked us through the image of Baal, which was set on fire. This is an important element of today's story. So check out what happened in Iran. And this is the email in question. An email that, by the way, was sent from I think from one of Jeffrey Epstein's banks to JP Morgan. JP Morgan, we said, is linked to the Zodiac Club, which is this very elite secret society. And of course, the Iranians wanted to use all this depraved situation, this compromise with one of the deities that appears in the Old Testament, guys, as one of the, if not the main enemy of Yahweh, and burn the effigy of Baal during their anniversary. So this act of resistance towards the West addressed, of course, to Jeffrey Epstein and his friends, because today, if we have a war in Iran, if we have a mess that brings us to the gas to pay here in California over $6 at the gas pump for each gallon, in other states over $4. This mess, which is created on purpose, so we go back to the Great Reset, which I discussed in Volume 7 of my Confessions. It's only helping that Great Reset, this whole thing. This crisis is not bringing us the golden age. Where is the golden age that Trump promised? There is no golden age. So we have in this whole mess a former executive of the bank, Edmund de Rothschild, that was working with Jeffrey Epstein. Because, one can make up stories, but we try to stay on facts here at the Leo Zagami Show for my 20 years of Illuminati Confessions. I like to stay on point. And yesterday, like I said, the world might have been shocked for the nomination of this François Paoli, especially a few days after the French police raided the offices of Edmond de Rothschild in Paris because of their links with Jeffrey Epstein. Of course, we don't know if it's also linked with the now new president of the Vatican Bank, but definitely when the new surface of office of the powerful Edmond de Rothschild banking group being raided in Paris, everybody was pretty shocked.
Banque Rothschild a été perquisitionnée à Paris dans le cadre des dossiers Epstein. On t'en dit plus. Ça s'est passé vendredi 20 mars.
So on the 20th of March, so a little over a week ago, the French police raided the offices for corruption in relation to a French diplomat which was linked with Jeffrey Epstein. And this happens just before the Pope nominates somebody who was actually nominated at a very, this Franz Pauli became in 7 years one of the top guys in the Edmond de Rothschild situation, in the Edmond de Rothschild group. He was for 7 years associated with them. He served from 2016 to 2023. And it's not a coincidence that he began serving as vice chairman of Edmond de Rothschild on the Swiss board of the bank in 2016, when Epstein was actually in that period acting an intermediary and advisory. He was also an advisor of this bank, and he will have definitely been involved in the decision to pick up François Pauli. So François Pauli was picked up and then eventually would become the CEO of the group in June 2021. And then suddenly he left in March 2023 when he had disagreements with Ariane de Rothschild, who was linked to Jeffrey Epstein. These disagreements were never officially revealed to the public, but apparently they involved the past work of Jeffrey Epstein. Now, as I explained in my book, The Rise and Fall of Frankie's Monster, my current bestseller, Ariane de Rothschild, who had married Edmond de Rothschild, eventually will become, of course, the person in charge of it. And she was not really ready for that, and that's why she asked for the help of Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein was officially paid 25 million, at least 25 million for the work conducted for Ariane de Rothschild and for the guy who is now in charge of the Vatican Bank. So it's kind of pretty clear where we are now. We have, like I explained in volume 12, which is the last installment of my Confessions of an Illuminati series, which is like an encyclopedia of the whole system. And this eventually is the eye on top of the pyramid. So you start from the base, you end up on top with the Jesuits and with this new Vatican that has been taken over by the Jesuits. I've already discussed in the past the fact that Linda Rothschild was, so the other faction also of the Rothschilds was getting involved with Pope Francis. Now we have the most blatant and obvious maneuver from this new Pope, who, like I explained in volume 12, would have been following in every footstep Pope Francis. Now it's out in the open. A former executive working with Ariane de Rothschild and Jeffrey Epstein is now in charge of the Vatican Bank. So it's pretty incredible to think also that in the last few days, there has been a lot in the news regarding the fact that the Vatican is having problems with the growing satanic and occult influence, and they need more exorcists.
If you feel like 2026 isn't going too well, this next story could offer an explanation. According to the world's most senior exorcists, there has been a rise in spiritual distress and Satanism. Representatives of the International Association of Exorcists met with Pope Leo at the Vatican this week, warning of a concerning growth in occultism and Satanism. They're pushing for at least one exorcist in every Catholic diocese around the world in order to combat what they say are the actions of the devil. The Pope has previously expressed his support for the delicate and necessary work they do.
I find quite paradoxical that while another powerful figure of the Sabbatean Frankist milieu is taking direct control of the Catholic Church finances, top exorcists meet in the Vatican with Pope Leo in a private audience on March 13th to ask him to reinforce the ranks of priests and bishops, especially here in the US, trained to deal with the surging occult and satanic practices. So, this Pope is not really fighting the devil. He's inviting him to oversee the Vatican finances. After all, if you think about it, in theological and spiritual context, the devil is often portrayed as understanding money and finance, just like Jeffrey Epstein, utilizing them as tools for distraction, temptation, and disruption. Now, the devil is believed to use financial stress, greed, and the pursuit of wealth to hinder spiritual growth and cause people to rely on material possession rather than faith. So I'm sure he will love his new job thanks to Francois Pauli in the Vatican. No? And all this comes also with the Baal reference. So let's go back to more images to what happened for the anniversary of the Islamic Republic in Iran, because it's rather interesting.
Allahu Akbar! Haydar, Haydar! Haydar, Haydar! Haydar, Haydar! Hame! Haydar, Haydar! Haydar, Haydar!
So, here in the West, we are now perceived as decadent, as in bed with Satan, with Moloch, with Baal, with the worst demons. And rightly so. Because, when you even appoint a guy linked to the Rothschilds and Jeffrey Epstein to guide the Vatican Bank, that's it, Come on, guys. The whole thing is just, no. Now, what is happening today in America and around the world? No King's Day. The idea is to oppose, of course, Donald J. Trump. Donald J. Trump, who is definitely losing favor with the working class. And as I've been saying for the last few months, just wait for the midterm elections, because that's when the whole political establishment, including the Republicans, will rebel against Donald J. Trump. Because Donald J. Trump, guys, is losing the working class.
So how are working class Americans feeling about the job that Donald Trump is doing? We've got our data chief here, Harry Enton, joining us. How are people feeling who are making $50K or under, which is considered, from statistics, the working class in America?
The working class, those making $50K or less, those making under $50K, we're a big swing vote. We're a big swing vote in the 2024 election. Trump was able to win them. That was a very important part of his coalition. But look at this now. Look at the net approval rating that he has with those making under 50K. Down it goes. Look at that. That's a 26-point switcheroo in the latest average of polls. Look at that, minus 24 points. The working class voters are abandoning Donald Trump. Those who helped put him over the top in 2024 are saying, you know what? Not for me.
And he's not for me right now. I make less than 50,000. I'm sorry to say. I'm not, I'm proudly a member of the working class. And for that reason, in line with the working class, we oppose a guy who is favoring his friends, like I've shown you on Wednesday, the guys who are promoting the dark enlightenment, the technocrats, the elite. There's no golden age for us. We go to the gas pump, we go to the supermarket, there's no golden age. It's actually getting worse and worse. So you can't really blame the people who today, even from the Republican who voted for Trump, switched sides for one day and went and joined the No Kings protest. Because Trump has been a great disappointment. Trump this week came out with the idea that now he's going to sign the dollar bills. He's going to be the one who signs our money. I mean, that is like Trump's signature will appear on paper currency in affairs for a sitting president. What kind of megalomaniac does that? Dollar bills have been historically signed by the US Treasurer and the Treasury Secretary. Now this guy wants to sign the dollar bills. He, of course, hasn't managed to overthrow the Federal Reserve, because that's, of course, is like, in dark enlightenment terms, that is really the cathedral. And he doesn't have the possibility of overthrowing it. So he says, okay, I'm going to sign them. I'm going to sign the dollar bills. And that's going to be my symbolic takeover of the whole show. Because in Rothschild terms, who prints the money, controls everything. And who signs the money controls everything. So Trump now has become mega rich. At the beginning of his presidency, he brought his wealth up to 4.5 billion. He has now brought his wealth to 6.5 billion. I repeat, 6.5 billion. Forbes tells us that Trump has added 1.4 billion over the past year, leveraging the presidency for profit. Now, guys, I'm sorry to say, but this is a betrayal, and this betrayal can't be forgiven. We are all suffering because of Trump. And it's no longer about politics. I'm sorry. I think that politics is no longer something that we can rely on. Trump was the last shit show, was the last attempt by a system who wanted to present somebody who was allegedly draining the swamp. He didn't drain anything. He's now in charge of the swamp. And he's actually making the swamp even more swampy. So it's sad to see that we all fall for it, but I will encourage people to go and see the episode number 13 of our new series that was broadcasted on Wednesday, so you can have a clear idea of the dark enlightenment figures behind Trump, unfortunately. The US has only destroyed a third of Iran's missiles. And that means that they will keep on attacking. And of course, the Gulf states are starting to become increasingly worried. and even Israel is running out of interceptors. So it's not going to be very nice what we're going to see in the next few weeks, especially if these special forces, Marines, and so on are brought into a combat situation to take over these islands there in the Strait of Hormuz, because that's going to be really a big mess. Already we are seeing more and more American soldiers, unfortunately, being killed. And in the meantime, of course, every time there is a disaster of this kind, here we have Hanoi Jane back from the dead, because she never seems to die. She's back. She's back.
On June 14th of last year, Donald Trump's birthday, more than 5 million people took to the streets all across the country.
Okay, so you remember Hanoi Jane? Here she is. Guys, she never dies. She's the most unpatriotic piece of garbage to ever walk the earth. Jane Fonda.
I watched your event today. We all watched your event today. And I should note for the audience, you were in Washington, D.C. today, speaking outside the Kennedy Center for an event, that's one I'm referring to, in defense of free expression. So tell us about the event and the message you were really trying to get across to people watching.
I mean, it's like I have a deja vu. Am I back in the Vietnam years, in the Vietnam War years? It's like, incredible, no? When you watch deja vu. It's like a repeat of things already gone wrong. Sad for the many soldiers that unfortunately are going to be losing their lives to a senseless war that is basically orchestrated by the military-industrial complex, just like the pandemic was orchestrated by the big pharma. And of course, what are the biggest financial assets of the banking cartel, the Sabatian Franklin cartel? The big pharma and the military-industrial complex. So that's what's happening here. Oil prices are close at highest level since 2022. And that's only the beginning, because we know that in a few months, if this continues, then we're going to go in a stagflation. We're going to go in a situation that is going to be really unprecedented, worse than what we saw after the Lehman Brothers collapse in September 2008. And all this is very disturbing, especially when the Kremlin, once again, with Medvedev, issues a chilling nuclear war threat, warning and blaming Trump and blah, blah, blah. But in all this, billionaires continue to make money. And we have a new billionaire, a new Satanist billionaire among us. Lady Gaga. You remember that Netflix documentary in which she used the music from Lucifer Rising, the soundtrack from Lucifer Rising of Kenneth Anger, made by Bobby Beausoleil in jail. I'm talking about Lady Gaga, guys. Lady Gaga is near $1 billion club on 40th birthday, and she is, of course, rich because of the devil. Maybe she can also go and join the Vatican Bank, like a lot of these people do, guys, because the Vatican Bank has always functioned very well for people doing some kind of creative financing. Let's call it creative financing. Lady Gaga demonstrates that if you are loyal to Satan, to Baal, you're probably gonna end up making a lot of money. Is that a good thing? Absolutely not. This week we also had another satanic installation of the new Archbishop of Canterbury for the Anglican Church. This is not a musical. is not some kind of ethnic event, but is the installation of the new Archbishop of Canterbury. The Vatican, of course, is very happy. It uses now the Anglican Church as an experimental ground after they brought them back into the fold with King Charles going to the Vatican and co-celebrating with the Pope. Can you imagine? This is the installation of a new Archbishop who is a woman who used to be until 40, she was 40, a nurse for cancer patients. And now, here she is.
Let us greet our newly installed Archbishop.
Prince William, future Antichrist, and Princess Kate applauding. She's not a mullah, but she's called Sarah Mulali. Maybe that can partially make the Muslims happy.
Begins with the same gospel calling to follow Christ and shepherd God's people. On the 25th of March 2026, Sarah Mulali was installed as the 106th Archbishop of Canterbury.
What a joke. If we thought that the Pope in Rome was a joke, the Anglican Church, which was, the kickstart of the Reformation with Martin Luther King following and all the rest, those were the people who made the Reformation. Now, we know that the Jesuits, as I explained in volume 12 of my confessions, then arrived with the Counter-Reformation, and that Counter-Reformation is now in full effect, and now we have an Archbishop of Canterbury who is a woman. What do you think about it? I find it a little bit weird, to say the least. Let's go back to Pope Leo XIV, because this week we were also talking about this exorcist that went and visited the Pope, worried about the increase in the occult and Satanism.
The Holy See, there was a meeting of the minds of the church's exorcists. According to reports, on Friday, March 13th, Pope Leo XIV met privately with the International Association of Exorcists, where they reported on the growing prevalence of cases related to occultism, esotericism, and Satanism. The group asked the Pope to ensure every diocese has one or more adequately trained exorcist priests and make sure dioceses are prepared with seminary training, specific programs for new bishops, and clear discernment criteria. Currents News spoke to Monsignor Stephen Rossetti, chief exorcist of the Archdiocese of Washington, D.C., about the meeting and this reported uptick in satanic cases.
We're all seeing a dramatic rise in the number of people asking for an exorcism for a variety of reasons. But one of those reasons is that more and more people are into witchcraft, Satanism, the occult, and as people fall away from the faith and practice this, what we call divination, it opens them up to being possessed, frankly, and we see lots of cases of it.
Monsignor Rossetti went on to say the way to protect yourself from possessions is to stay away from evil practices and practicing the faith. Hi, I'm Christine Persichetti, anchor.
Yeah, sure, whatever. The only way is to follow the Catholic Church, and then you can end up in hell. Probably because that is the situation, the present situation. But we might be able to debate more about this present crisis, which, of course, it's real. I mean, I was one of the first people during the pandemic to say that the situation was getting out of control and the cases of possession were increasing. While instead, the Catholic Church at the time was saying, no, they're actually diminishing. No worries. Just stay at home in front of your computers. Let Cyber Satan join you. Actually invoke Cyber Satan, and you can all have a beautiful time with Cyber Satan. Then, once the pandemic was over, they realized that the situation was very different. And now we have an enormous increase. We are talking here, guys, about a spectacular increase in the number of cases of possession. In fact, the Vatican had to increase the number of exorcists, and it's getting only worse and worse every day. This surge of Satanism is not a joke. It's absolutely not a joke. And here we have Pope Leo host exorcist summit at the Vatican over fears a worldwide surge in Satanism. I've also explained a couple of weeks ago that this increase is also due to the fact that technology and even the AI is aiding Satanists. However, the representatives of the International Association of Exorcists, who will be meeting in Rome, as I stated in my special, which we dedicated to this subject a couple of weeks ago, went to visit the Pope, and they requested this private audience on March 13th at the Vatican Apostolic Palace. Apparently, it lasted only half an hour, this meeting. And I was quite surprised by the fact that, a subject of such importance, and Pope Leo dedicates to these people who come from all over the world half an hour to discuss the most important subject of them all, Satan. 30 minutes. That's okay. I can't dedicate more than 30 minutes. 30 minutes. Guys, they should have dedicated a whole day. Now, during this half an hour meeting, the Association of the Exorcists presented the Pope with a detailed report. They warned him of a painful and increasingly widespread situation of people seriously affected by the extraordinary action of the devil as a result of their involvement in occult sects. And this, according to an official statement that was released after the meeting. So there is increasing number of people who are joining groups like Crowley's OTO, just to make an example, but there is many others, of course. I can tell you that today there is probably a bunch of New Age sects which are more recent that are equally as dangerous. Some of them even claim they work with the Archangel Michael, this and this other, but in reality they are all a bunch of dangerous sectarian realities. So the group's primary proposal to the Pope, who I repeat, I think dedicated to this subject way too little of his time, 30 minutes, was structural and at the same time educational. Given the great suffering that is caused at the moment by the action of the devil, they have proposed that each diocese in the world will have at least one or more exorcists. So it's almost like the exorcists, who of course come from an association which has the roots in people like Father Amort, people who knew of the dangers of the new exorcist rite. I explained that in volume 6.66. Actually, here I show in detail the whole prayers and how the Vatican II, the post-Vatican II, Vatican II is the Second Vatican Council, in 1999, the year which also saw the death of Malachi Martin, Father Malachi Martin, decided to review and edit basically the rite of exorcism, making it useless. That's why then the exorcists like Father Amort wanted to create an association that brought back the ritual to the Roman rite, the more traditional Roman rite ritual, because it was, and and this is not me who says that, but it was the late Father Hammer who said it was like giving a gun with no bullets to an exorcist. The fact that he was required to use a new prayer, and this new prayer, like I explain in detail in this book, was omitting a number of things, made it impossible to use. Then in the end, they understood that. Now, so the association, the International Association of Exorcists, expanded their formation at multiple levels of the church's life in recent years. They have been instructing in seminaries about the real existence of the demonic world. It's almost like the church has a bipolar problem, a schizophrenic problem, because while nominating a Sabbatean Frankist to head the Vatican Bank, they are still trying to save the souls through these parish priests and exorcists who are trying some way to, but it's the two things contradict each other. It doesn't make any sense in a way, no? The comments of one of the people responsible for this association of exorcists who went to visit the Pope were rather clear, and I'm going to quote him, one of the people responsible of this organization. They said that the spread of occultism in its various forms and of Satanism unfortunately opens doors and windows to the extraordinary action of the devil in today's world. And they said it causes grave suffering in those who imprudently turn to these practices through possible cases of possession, vexation, obsession, or diabolical infestation. And they say it's reasonable to believe that these cases are growing, are increasing. Of course they are increasing. Cyber Satan, the internet, facilitates the connection with these sectarian realities. Today, people who want to join groups like Crowley's, Thelemic OTO, and all the other kind of groups, the Church of Satan rather than the Temple of Set or other, all of these groups, they can do it very easily through the World Wide Web. You go on the internet, you go on Google, and even an idiot can contact this sectarian reality. The sectarian reality preys on people who are weak-minded. During my time in the various groups that we commonly call the Illuminati, which of course I described in all 12 volumes of my confessions very much in detail, I explained how maybe people like me, of course, were recruited and immediately positioned in high places, while instead the weaker people were the ones who were utilized to recruit other people like them and to, of course, bring to the various groups money and even influence, if these were people of power and influence. But at times, it might have simply been your usual young Gothic kind of guy or person, that wants to, maybe join for a thrill these groups. But then once you are in and you start getting into the whole thing by getting initiated, because these initiations, and we might touch again on this specific subject, the initiations are devised so that the demonic gradually enters you. So while the ritual is the evocation, when you evoke a demon and he appears. But when you invoke, it's a different thing. You are invoking this demon to actually join you, to become part of you, and that's when you become possessed. So that's a very important difference that needs to be always underlined. Now, authorized exorcists, from my own experience, because I worked with some of them, are genuine people who really believe in Christ's mandate to cast out demons. They believe in assisting the suffering. They believe in what they're doing. And I can tell you that most of the exorcists are also critical at times of the Vatican hierarchy, because they understand the limits of it. Now, one of the top exorcists here in the United States at the moment, who has been appearing on podcasts and so on, is Father Chad Ripperger. There is an article that appeared today on the New York Post, which is very revealing. Here it is. Top exorcist. It's definitely a top exorcist, Father Ripperger. Demand for exorcists at a record high, but this demon hunter doesn't blame the devil for the trend. This is an article published today on the New York Post, and it's an article of by Gene Erickson. The demand for exorcists, and I'm quoting here the article in question, is at record levels, claims a leading demon hunter who blames human nature as much as the devil for the trend. Father Chad Ripperger, a Catholic priest in the Archdiocese of Denver, told the Post there aren't more demons running amok on earth. The blame lies primarily with people themselves. They blatantly disregard the church teachings and act on their own dark impulses instead. This is Father Chad, which, of course, most of you probably already know. The demons, quote, open quote, the demons are empowered as more and more people commit evil deeds. Father Ripperger said, if a person willingly becomes involved in these evil deeds, Satanism or witchcraft, the action leads to a susceptibility of Satan's influence, so that he or she is easily manipulated and can be incited to do more evil things. During an exorcism, the priest, armed with holy water, the crucifix, and Bible, reads prayers and scriptures to the possessed, while commanding the demon to depart. And here it cites also the 1970 film The Exorcist, which I've discussed also in volume 6.66, because this is a book that explains the involvement of the Jesuits in the film The Exorcist, which is an important involvement. I've also discussed it in volume 4. Today, the Catholic Church has said there are roughly 150 priests in the US trained to practice exorcism. The number has increased an astonishing 650% since 2020, when only about 20 priests were trained for the position, said Ripperger. This is completely aligned with what I've written in my books and in my articles. You can go and check my articles from 2020, 2019. I was warning about this rise in satanic activities, especially in relation also with the start of the pandemic, with people being locked up home in front of their computers, a lot of young people. Nobody really believed me. The Catholic Church was actually, initially saying, oh, actually people are requiring less the exorcism, there is less demonic activity around that, sure. And now this confirmation by Father Chad Ripperger confirms everything I've been saying for many years. Thank you for joining the Leo Zagami Show, 20 years of Illuminati confessions and Illuminati news. This is a very special kind of show made possible thanks to a sponsor. I want to thank for today Larry Frascella, Daniel Estes, and all those people who purchase my books, because you make possible this show now twice a week. And let's keep it that way. So keep on sustaining our project, and I hope you enjoyed today's show. And if you enjoyed today's show, please put like and please subscribe to this channel, and bring also your friends to subscribe to my channels, because during the whole pandemic, as you know, I was censored over and over again. 17 of my channels were removed from YouTube, and now we need to rebuild the whole thing.
Illuminati want my mind, soul, and my body.
Have a great weekend, my friends.
دشمن خواهد افتاد.